When you're an old man like me, people think your memories get softer with time like old bread. Well, mine didn't. Mine stayed sharp, especially the one about the day my daughter, Melissa, left me at that senior home and drove away like she was late for a movie. That was 12 years ago. 12 long years of bingo nights, lukewarm soup, and nurses who insisted my socks express my personality. I'm 78, not 17. I don't need my socks to shout. Anyway, life can be funny. Cruel, but funny. Because just last month, I was standing inside my own restaurant, checking if the chef wasn't burning the soup again, when I saw her, my daughter, standing outside. Hair messy, jacket too big, eyes darting like she was afraid someone might recognize her. And then she lifted a cardboard sign. Please, help. I froze. My heart did something strange, like it sighed, then punched me from the inside. Before I tell you what happened next, subscribe, hit the like button, and tell me in the comments how old you are and where you're from. For you, it's just a small thing. But for me, it's the reason I keep telling these stories. I stepped closer to the window, squinting like some confused grandpa detective. No, it was definitely her. Melissa. The same daughter who once told me she had no space in her life for an old man stuck in the past. And here she was, in my present, in front of my restaurant, asking strangers for help. Funny how the world spins. At that moment, she lifted her head, and our eyes met. She dropped the sign. I dropped the spoon I was holding, and the whole room fell silent except for the chef, who muttered, "Oh boy," like the universe had just delivered a plot twist meant only for him. She didn't know yet that the restaurant she was standing in front of was mine. I didn't rush outside. No, sir. At my age, you learn that dramatic pauses are free and powerful. So I stood there behind the glass, watching her bend down to pick up that cardboard sign like it had suddenly become fragile. Her hands were shaking. Mine were too, but only because I hadn't had my afternoon tea yet. I stepped out slowly, mostly because my knee makes a sound like a squeaky door when I move too fast. The bell above the restaurant door jingled, the cheerful kind of jingle that does not match the moment when a father meets the daughter who abandoned him for over a decade. She didn't recognize me at first. "Sir," she said softly, not looking up, "could you spare?" Then she looked straight into my face. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. She looked like a fish realizing the aquarium walls are missing. "Dad," she whispered. "Well," I said, clearing my throat, "depends who's asking. Last time someone called me that, they drove away before I finished my sandwich." Her face turned pale. I didn't know this was your restaurant." "Most people don't," I said, "except the health inspector. He knows everything, walks in like he owns the place." Behind me, Miguel, my chef, stuck his head out of the kitchen and waved a ladle like he was greeting royalty. "Is that your daughter? The one from the story? The Miguel," I said sharply. "Back to the soup." Melissa looked down at her shoes. They were worn, scraped, tired the same way she looked when she finally lifted her eyes again. "Dad, I'm not here to bother you. I didn't know where else to." I raised a hand. "Stop. Don't do the movie version. Just tell me the truth." She let out a small breath. "I'm homeless." There it was. A sentence heavy enough to drop the whole street into silence. A father's heart can break in 1,000 quiet ways. But this one had a sound. A very specific one. It was the sound of 12 years crashing straight into the present. And then, just when the moment got too heavy, my knee cracked again. Loud, like a firework. Melissa jumped. I sighed. Miguel yelled from the kitchen, "You good, boss?" And that was the moment I realized. I wasn't ready to forgive her, but I also wasn't ready to walk away. I motioned for Melissa to follow me inside. Not because I'd already made up my mind, no. My brain was still arguing with my heart like two old men fighting over the last chair at bingo night. I just couldn't let her stand out there like a lost tourist. Inside, the restaurant was in full lunchtime chaos. Forks clinking, someone complaining their coffee was too hot, another someone complaining theirs was too cold, and an elderly couple arguing passionately about who stole whose fry. Classic Tuesday. Melissa stepped in, hesitated, then looked around with slow disbelief. You really own this place? Since 2016, I said. Bought it right after your departure. I waved my hand to avoid using the word abandonment, though it sat in my throat like a stone. She lowered her gaze again, guilt written all over her like a discount sign. I pointed to an empty booth by the window, the one with the wobbly table leg. You can sit, but careful if you lean too hard. It'll tilt, and then you'll blame me for that too. A tiny, embarrassed smile flickered across her face. Good. A little comedy helps the medicine go down. Miguel arrived instantly, practically sliding into the booth with a notepad. What would you like? Soup? Sandwich? Life advice? Emotional support? I offer everything. Miguel, I groaned. She'll have the soup. It's good soup, he whispered to her like he was revealing state secrets. When he left, Melissa wrapped her hands around the warm cup he brought back. Her fingers were thin, colder than they should be. Dad, she said quietly, I didn't come to ask for anything. I didn't even know you'd be here. I've been struggling. Lost my job, lost my apartment, lost... She swallowed. Lost myself, I guess. I watched her. I really watched her. Not the grown woman. Not the stranger. Not the one who had walked away. Just my kid. She continued, voice cracking. I know I hurt you. I was stupid. Angry. My ex told me you were holding me back. That you were too much responsibility. I snorted. Responsibility? You mean feeding me oatmeal and yelling when I tried to fix the toaster? She gave a tiny laugh, soft, broken, but real. And then something changed in her expression. Something deeper. Dad, she whispered, why didn't you ever try to find me? That question hit me like a frying pan dropped from the second floor. Because she didn't know. She didn't know the whole truth. And for the first time in 12 years, I considered telling her everything. I leaned back in the booth, pressing my palm to the table so it wouldn't wobble under the weight of what was coming. Melissa looked at me with those same eyes she had as a kid. Big, waiting, hopeful, but now dimmed by years I hadn't been part of. Why didn't I find you? I repeated softly. Well, sweetheart, I tried. Her eyebrows jumped. You... what? Oh yes, I said, lifting my cup of tea like I was about to make a toast to painful memories. 3 separate times. You think I just sat in the senior home knitting sweaters and collecting dust. I escaped more often than the raccoon that keeps breaking into our dumpster. Melissa blinked. You escaped? Twice, I corrected. The 3rd time they held my shoes hostage. Miguel, who was wiping a nearby counter, looked over. He tied bedsheets together. He whispered loudly to a customer like he was narrating a documentary. Miguel! I barked. He saluted and disappeared into the kitchen again. Melissa stared at me, stunned. You tried to find me, but I never heard anything. That's because every time I got close, I sighed. Your ex-husband, what was his name? Trent? Trevor? Tater Tot? Trent, she muttered. Yes, him. He told me you wanted nothing to do with me. Said you'd moved states, changed numbers, rebuilt your life. I paused. And each time he told me that, he smiled like a man who enjoyed telling it. Melissa's face twisted pain, guilt, realization all mixing together. That's not true, she whispered. He wanted me to cut everyone out. Said my past made me weak. I didn't know what he told you. Well, I said, taking another sip. He did a convincing job. By the 3rd attempt, I thought maybe you truly didn't want the burden of an old man. She shook her head vigorously. No, Dad, I never said that. I never wanted you gone. Her eyes glistened. I was young, I was stupid, I was pressured, and then ashamed. I folded my hands. Ashamed of what? She looked down, voice trembling. That I left you there. That I let him talk me into it. That I didn't even check if you were okay. I kept thinking, I'll go back one day. When I get my life together. When I fix things. But my life never got together. And the longer I waited, the harder it became. I took a slow breath, heavy but steady. Melissa, I said, I'm going to tell you something, and you're not going to like it. She lifted her eyes, bracing herself. You didn't lose me 12 years ago. I tapped my chest lightly. I lost you. Her mouth quivered. And now, I added, forcing a bit of humor to keep the tears from winning, you've wandered right back into my restaurant like a poorly written plot twist. She let out a tearful laugh, the kind that hurts and heals at the same time. Just then, a waiter approached and politely asked, Everything okay here, folks? No, Melissa sniffed. Yes, I said at the same time. He blinked, then backed away like he'd walked into a Shakespeare play halfway through. But the moment between me and Melissa, it wasn't over. Because the truth wasn't fully told, yet not even close. I looked at Melissa, really looked and realized there was something else hiding behind her tears. Shame, yes. Regret, sure. But also, fear. The kind a child has when they're waiting for a punishment that might never end. Melissa, I said quietly, there's something you should know. She swallowed hard, bracing herself like I was about to announce her sentence. But instead, I leaned in and whispered, You didn't just leave me in that home. You left me with roommates. Her tearful expression froze. Roommates? Oh, yes. I nodded dramatically. 3 of them. First was Harold 82, snored like an old motorcycle, said he fought in the war. Never specified which one. Could have been the war against a broken vacuum cleaner for all I know. Melissa blinked, confused, sad, and a tiny bit curious. Then there was Chester, I continued, who insisted the government was stealing his socks. We found out later he just kept dropping them behind the dryer. I paused. And my favorite Leonard. Lovely guy. Hid pudding cups under his mattress like a pirate hiding gold. A small, unwilling smile tugged at her lips. Good. If she was smiling, she was listening. And if she was listening, she was ready. But you know what all 3 of them had in common? I asked. She shook her head. They all thought I talked about you too much. Melissa's breath hitched. You talked about me? Oh yes, I said. Every day. They could practically recite your childhood stories by heart. Harold even called you kiddo once by accident. She covered her mouth with her hand. Not crying, no, this was something else, something deeper. But, I added, my tone softening, they also saw the worst day of my life. Melissa looked up, worried. What day? The day I got the letter. She froze. What letter? I took a slow breath. The one from Trent. He sent it to the senior home. Said you never wanted me to contact you again. Said if I tried, it would mess up your new family. Said you were moving on. Melissa's whole body tensed. I never wrote anything like that. I know, I said. I figured it out much later. She looked furious, heartbroken, betrayed all at once. Her fingers curled around the edge of the soup cup, like she needed something to hold on to. Dad, why didn't you show me that? Why didn't you try again? I shrugged gently. Because after that letter, I believed you'd be happier without me. And I didn't want to force my way into a life where I thought I wasn't wanted. Melissa wiped her face with her sleeve, the sleeve that was too long because the jacket wasn't hers. Dad, I'm so sorry, she whispered. I let him control everything. I let him push everyone away. I should have known. I should have checked. I should have. I raised a finger. Melissa, regret is loud, but it doesn't fix anything until you let it speak, and then let it go. She stared at me, breathing hard, eyes red. And then, because apparently emotional scenes attract chaos, a customer at the next table yelled at his wife, Martha, if you steal my freeze one more time, I'm telling the waiter they're my birthday freeze. Martha replied, deadpan, they taste better when they're stolen. Melissa let out a shaky laugh, one she clearly didn't expect. But the heaviness between us wasn't gone, because there was still one truth left, the one I'd never said out loud. And telling it might change everything. Melissa sat there, shoulders hunched, fingers tangled together like she was afraid they might escape. And I felt something tightening inside my chest. The kind of tightening that usually means one of 2 things. 1, I'm about to say something important. Or two. I ate lunch too fast. This time, unfortunately, it was the first one. Melissa, I said slowly, there's a part of the story I never told you, not because I wanted to hide it, but because I didn't want pity. Her eyes lifted. Dad, what part? I sighed and leaned back, staring at the ceiling for a moment mostly, so I wouldn't have to look at her worried face while I dug up the memory I'd buried the deepest. Do you remember, I began softly, the day you dropped me off at the home? The argument we had? She nodded quickly. Too quickly. I said awful things. Things I didn't mean. Yes, I chuckled sadly. You told me I was impossible to live with, that I judged everything. I waved a hand. Which was true, by the way. I absolutely judged your ex-husband's haircut. It looked like he lost a fight with a weed trimmer. A tiny, guilty smile flashed across her face. But, I continued, do you remember what I said right before you slammed the car door? She hesitated. No, I was too angry. I swallowed. I told you. If leaving me gives you a better life, then go. I don't want to be the anchor that keeps you drowning. Her eyes widened, like she'd just heard something she desperately needed 12 years ago. And you know what you said, I added gently. She shook her head. You said, fine. And you drove away. Melissa covered her face with both hands. Oh God, Dad, I didn't understand. I was so stubborn I thought you were pushing me away. I wasn't, I said. I was trying to let you choose your life, not live mine. She dropped her hands. Her eyes were wet, red, but clear, in a way I hadn't seen in years. I thought you hated me, she whispered. And I said, tapping my chest lightly, thought you didn't want anything to do with me. We stared at each other, years of miscommunication sitting between us like an overstuffed suitcase that no one wanted to open. Then, just as the silence got so thick you could paint it, our elderly waitress, Carol, marched over to the table. She slapped a refill in front of me and said loudly, You two look miserable. Coffee's on the house. But if you start crying, go outside, I just cleaned this floor. Melissa blinked. I blinked. Then we both laughed, a real laugh this time, the kind that cracks something open. When Carol left, Melissa whispered, Dad, can I stay here tonight? Just for one night? I don't have anywhere else. I took a breath, a deep one. This was the moment, the choice, the turning point. But it wasn't simple, not after 12 years. So I nodded and said, one night. But tomorrow, we talk about the rest. No running, no disappearing. She nodded quickly, too quickly, then whispered, Thank you, Dad. But she didn't know yet. One night with me would change everything in a way she didn't expect. I should have known the universe wouldn't let things stay simple. It has a personal hobby of complicating my life at the worst possible moments. Always has. Always will. After closing the restaurant, I took Melissa upstairs to the small apartment I keep above the diner. Nothing fancy, one bedroom, an old recliner that growls when you sit on it, and a lamp that flickers like it's communicating with ghosts. Melissa walked in slowly, looking around. It's cozy, she said. That's code for small, I replied. It's all right. I've been called worse. Once, a plumber called my sink emotionally unstable. She almost smiled. I pointed to the couch. You can sleep here. It folds out if you threaten it. She gently sat down, fingers brushing the fabric like she wasn't sure she deserved it. I headed to the kitchen. If you could call 3 cabinets a kitchen and put on a kettle. So, I said gently, how long have you been on the street? She didn't look up. 7 months. The kettle clicked on. My heart clicked off. 7? I repeated, louder than I intended. She nodded. After Trent left me, I tried to start over. 2 jobs. Then I got sick. Missed shifts. Lost the apartment. She exhaled shakily. And the worst part? I walked past this restaurant a few times before today, but I couldn't make myself come inside. I paused in the doorway. Why not? She smiled sadly. Because I wasn't sure you'd open the door. I blinked at her, feeling something heavy shift in my chest. Well, I said, clearing my throat, I opened it today. even held it open. Nearly pulled my shoulder, but still. Melissa let out a soft laugh, tired but real. When the tea was ready, I set a mug in front of her. She wrapped her hands around it like it was the only warm thing she'd touched in months. "Dad," she whispered, "I don't deserve this." I sat down across from her with a grunt that made my hip pop. No one deserves a lot of things, but life hands them to us anyway, good or bad. She stared at me, eyes glassy. "You still care, after everything?" "Well," I shrugged. "Parenthood is like a tattoo, painful, permanent, and sometimes you regret the design, but it's yours." She laughed, actually laughed, and wiped her face. But just as the mood softened, there was a loud crash outside. We both jumped. I limped to the window, lifted the blinds, and groaned. Of course, a raccoon. The raccoon was halfway inside my trash can again, looking at me like he paid rent. Melissa peered over my shoulder. "Is that normal?" "That," I said, pointing angrily at the fluffy criminal, "is Gerald. He's been stealing my leftovers since 2018. At this point, I think he's a business partner." Gerald hissed at me like he disagreed with our profit-sharing arrangement. Melissa suddenly covered her mouth and started laughing so hard she had to sit down on the armchair. And in that moment, watching my daughter laugh in my tiny apartment, with Gerald banging around the alley like a drunk drummer, something softened inside me. Something old, something cracked, something that had waited 12 years to breathe. She finally looked up and asked quietly, "Dad, do you think I can really start over?" I didn't answer right away, because I knew the truth would hurt and heal at the same time. And tomorrow morning, she'd hear that truth. Morning came earlier than either of us wanted, mostly because the upstairs radiator makes a sound like an elderly man clearing his throat every hour on the hour. At 6:13 a.m. it did one final HRRRMMPFFFT, and Melissa jolted awake on the couch like someone fired a starting pistol. I shuffled out of the bedroom, hair sticking up like I'd just survived a tornado. "Good morning," I croaked. She blinked at me. "Dad, did the apartment just growl at us?" "No," I sighed. "That was the radiator. It's haunted. I've made peace with it." Melissa rubbed her eyes. "You sleep here every night?" "Not with the radiator, if that's what you mean." She chuckled lightly, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. I put on coffee. She watched me like she was afraid any sound might break the fragile air between us. "Dad?" she asked softly. "Yes?" "What did you mean last night about telling me something this morning?" I took a slow breath, reached for 2 mugs, and sat across from her again exactly where we talked last night. Except today, she looked different, smaller, as if the sunlight made every bruise in her life more visible. "Melissa," I began, "you asked if you can start over." She nodded slowly. "You can," I said, "but not the way you think." She frowned, confused. "You don't rebuild your life by pretending the old one never happened. That's what you tried with Trent. New apartment, new family, new rules. But you know what happens when you build something on rotten wood?" "It falls apart," she whispered. "Exactly. And you've been falling for 12 years. She looked down, her hands trembling slightly. "But there's something more you need to know," I continued. "Something I never told you, because I didn't think it was the right time." She lifted her eyes, waiting scared. "Remember when I said I tried to find you 3 times? Yes. That wasn't the whole truth." Her breath caught. "I didn't stop because of Trent's letter," I said. "I stopped because the doctor warned me I shouldn't be traveling alone anymore." She stared at me, confused, worried, then horrified. "You were sick?" "Not sick," I said quickly, lifting a hand. "Just old and stubborn, and apparently prone to passing out in supermarkets. But I didn't want you to find out. I didn't want to add guilt to your life. You had enough mess on your plate." Melissa covered her mouth, shoulders shaking. "Dad, why didn't you tell me?" "Because you already thought I needed saving, and I didn't want to be a burden." She shook her head wildly. "You were never a burden. I was the one." "No." I tapped the table softly. "We both messed up, both. Don't rewrite the story to make yourself the villain. Life is rarely that simple. She stared at me, tears falling freely now. And then, right when the moment reached peak emotional intensity, a loud thump came from the alley. We both froze. Another thump. Then a metallic clang. I dragged myself to the window. Gerald, the raccoon, had knocked over the entire trash can and was now sitting inside it like he'd bought property there. Melissa sniffed through her tears. He's back? Back? I grumbled. He's holding a brunch buffet. Gerald looked right at me and lifted a slice of stale bread like he was toasting victory. Melissa burst into laughter, crying and laughing at the same time. Maybe that's what healing looks like. When she finally calmed down, she whispered, "Dad, what do I do? How do I even begin to fix what I broke?" I leaned forward. "By hearing the one truth I haven't said yet." She stiffened, breath-catching. Because what I was about to say next was the thing she'd been silently hoping for and dreading since the moment she walked back into my life. I sat back down at the table, letting the weight of the moment settle. Melissa leaned forward like a student waiting for her final exam grade, except this one decided whether she'd get her father back or lose him all over again. I folded my hands. "Melissa, last night you asked if you could start over, and this morning you asked how to fix what you broke." She swallowed hard, gripping the mug as if it were a life preserver. "But the truth is, you can't fix the past," I said. "You can only show up for the present, and hope the present wants you." Her breath shook. "Does it?" I didn't answer immediately, mostly because the radiator chose that exact moment to make a dramatic BWWAAAMMMP, like a dying whale. Melissa jolted. I sighed. "Ignore him," I said. "He's emotional." She let out a tiny laugh, the fragile kind, then held her breath again. I reached across the table and gently tapped her hand. "Melissa, I want you in my life." Her eyes widened, like she didn't dare believe it. "But," I added calmly, "not as someone who needs saving, or pity, or forgiveness, on a silver platter." She blinked. "Then, how?" "As my daughter, the one I raised, the one I fought for, the one I told stories about to 3 very confused old men." A tear rolled down her cheek. "But I can't just pretend the last 12 years didn't happen," I continued, "and neither can you." She nodded, crying quietly. "I know. So here's the truth you needed," I said, voice steady. "We start from where we are, not from where we should have been." She covered her face with her hands, shoulders trembling. I waited. Sometimes the best thing a father can do is let his child fall apart so she has space to put herself back together. When she finally looked up, her voice cracked. "Dad, I'm scared." "So am I," admitted. "You think I'm not terrified? I've been living alone with a haunted radiator and a raccoon thief for years. My emotional support system is basically plumbing noises and wildlife." Melissa let out a laugh through tears, messy, loud, real. Then she whispered, "I don't want to lose you again." "You won't," I said simply. Silence followed, warm this time, not heavy. But then Melissa tensed. "Dad, there's something else I haven't told you. Something important." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh boy. If you tell me Trent is moving in with Gerald, I'm leaving the country." She almost smiled, but the fear in her eyes stayed. "No," she whispered. It's about why I was outside the restaurant yesterday." I frowned. "You said you were looking for help." "I was," she said, "but not just for myself." I leaned in slowly, heartbeat shifting, and then she said it soft, shaky, world-tilting. "Dad, I'm not alone. I have a child, a little girl." My breath hitched. "And she's here, in this town, with someone who shouldn't have her." Everything inside me went still, because helping a homeless daughter was one thing. Helping a granddaughter I'd never met and saving her from someone dangerous was something entirely different. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. My daughter's words hung in the air like a bell still ringing sharp, trembling, impossible to ignore. "A little girl," I repeated quietly. Melissa nodded, twisting her fingers together. "Her name is Emily. She's 5, and she's with Trent." My stomach tightened. Why? Because when I lost the apartment, he showed up out of nowhere. Said he'd help for a few days. I didn't know he was planning to take her. He told me I was unstable, unfit, that no court would side with me, and then he left with her. I've been looking for them ever since. She held her breath like the world might collapse if she exhaled. Dad, she whispered, I didn't come to the restaurant because I needed money. I came because I didn't know where else to go. I needed you. I sat back slowly. Me. The old man she left behind. The one she thought she'd lost. The one she finally came back to. And suddenly, after 12 years of silence, pain, and wrong turns, I understood something very clearly. This wasn't about the past anymore. It was about the future. Her future. My granddaughter's future. Our future. Melissa, I said, standing up. Get your coat. She blinked, startled. Where are we going? To get your daughter, I replied. Then, after a beat. And before you argue I'm too old to run after anybody, but I sure as daylight can out-talk, out-think, and out-stubborn that man. Believe me, I've had practice. She let out a breath that was half sob, half relief. We walked out of the apartment together, down the stairs, into the cool morning air. And for the first time in 12 years, she walked beside me, not ahead, not behind, not running away. Beside, we found Trent's shabby little rental 2 blocks away. He answered the door with that same arrogant smirk I remembered from the day Melissa first introduced him, the smirk that said he thought the whole world owed him something. Well, well, he said. Look who's crawling back. I stepped forward before Melissa could. No crawling, I said. Just standing. Something you might try one day. He frowned, confused, then annoyed. What do you want? I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. Emily. And you're going to hand her over. He scoffed. You can't tell me what to. Actually, I interrupted, sliding a folded piece of paper from my pocket. I can. Melissa stared at me, startled. Trent froze. Because in my hand was a document he didn't expect, the very thing I'd prepared years ago when I thought someday she might need protection from him. A notarized statement from an attorney. Witnesses. Records. Names. Dates. Enough to prove a long pattern of coercion, manipulation, and neglect. Trent blanched. You kept all that? Yes, I said simply. Because unlike you, I plan ahead. He swallowed, jaw tightening, and then he cracked. Fear twisted his face. A man who'd always relied on control suddenly had none. Within minutes, Melissa was holding Emily, a tiny girl with her mother's eyes and a shy smile that could melt concrete. When she looked at me, she tilted her head. Mommy, she whispered. Who is he? Melissa took a shaking breath. That, she said softly, is your grandpa. Emily reached out a small hand toward mine. Hi, Grandpa. I felt my throat close, not from age, not from regret, but from something I thought I'd lost completely. Hope. We walked away from that house together, 3 generations finally going in the same direction. Back at the restaurant, Miguel took one look at Emily and shouted, Aha! A new customer! Kids eat free until they start complaining! Emily laughed. Melissa cried again. And me. I just stood there, letting the warmth fill a place in me that had been cold for 12 years. And the life lesson? You don't get to choose how people leave you, but you can choose how you let them return. Bitterness keeps you alone. Boundaries keep you safe. And love, real love, gives you the strength to open the door again. Not because you forget the past, but because you're finally ready to build a better future together.